Okay, shalom, everybody. Shavua Tov, welcome back. We have a few things to say before we actually get into the text again. Number one, today is a very special day in Breslev circles. Today is the yard site of Reb Levi Yitzchak Bender. He was a fifth generation Breslever. He was one of the main people responsible for bringing forth Breslev to the new generation. He contained within him all the stories that took place in Uman, in Breslev, and like in the past 100 years. He was eyewitness to many, many stories of Breslevers. He saw the crazy devotions of the Ovdim, of the group of Breslevers who were just totally dedicated to davening and learning and serving Hashem, and were living in total poverty, but they were so happy and so connected. He saw things that people today would not be able to fathom. People couldn't do those type of things. And he was responsible for bringing down all the, if you want to say, the rest of traditions and the songs and the Rosh Hashanah davening. And also, he was considered a main elder here in Yerushalayim. Him and another one, Rabbi Leo Chaim Rosen, they were the main ones responsible for rebuilding Breslev after the Holocaust, after the destruction of the Holocaust and of communist Russia, to rebuild and start new fruit here in the Holy Land. These were two people who were very, very involved in doing that visitation. So it's his yard site today. It's funny because I discovered Breslev. He passed away on the 22nd of Tammuz, 1989. And I discovered Breslev in Toronto one day before. On Sunday, the 21st of Tammuz, 1989, is when I first came close to discover my first steps in coming baby, what's called baby toddling, baby training wheels, to discover Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Okay, that's one thing. So I guess we'll dedicate this class in his memory of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Avram Noach Bender. Number two, just an amazing insight on these 3 weeks and how they can technically relate to what we're learning in lesson 24. We mentioned this chidush many, many times from the Magid of Mizrich. The Magid of Mizrich took a verse from the book of Echa, Lamentations, the first chapter, where the verse reads, Kol rodfeha hisigua bein HaMeitzarim, that Tzion, Yerushalayim, the divine presence, is lamenting all those who pursued her, Yerushalayim, Tzion, in other words, the enemies who came to destroy the temple. They reached her to pursue her between the straits, Meitzarim, that's the tightness. So Rashi brings down the Midrash that this refers to between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av. On the 17th of Tammuz, the breaching of the wall, in other words, the enemies caused more damage. They burnt the Torah, and they desecrated the Holy Temple, and which eventually led to the destruction on the 9th of Av, right? Tisha B'Av was the beginning of the destruction. So that's why these 3 weeks are designated as Bein HaMeitzarim. And we said the chidush of the Magid Mizrich, Kol rodef ka, anyone who looks to run after Hashem, rodfeha, you can change the word rodfeha, which literally translates as running after her, after Tzion. You can also read it as rodef, running after Yud K of Hashem's name, Hashem's tetragrammatic, the four-letter name, Yud K Vav K. So whoever is looking to run after closeness to Hashem, an experience, a perception of Hashem, Hisig Vav K, Hisigua, is able to perceive and reach him in these 3 weeks. That's what we said many times already, that on one hand, these 3 weeks are a time of mourning and a limitation, and yet they're the 3 greatest Shabbatot of the year. These 3 Shabbatot, Pinchas, Matot, Mas'eh, and Dvarim, are considered one of the 3 highest Shabbatot of the year. They correspond to high levels of mochin. How could that be? That in such a sad time, a difficult time of 3 weeks, you have the highest Shabbatot? So this is the insight that we have. Look at this. We saw what the Magid says, right? Rodef Yud K, you perceive Vav K, which means the idea is that it's a time of uniting Hashem's 4-letter names. In our context, watch this. Rabbi Nachman started this lesson 24, if you remember, the very, very beginning. He said that it's that in the very first paragraph of this lesson 24, I'll read the English. The lesson starts, you should know, Rabbi Nachman teaches, there is a light higher than Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. This is the light of the Infinite One. This is how Rabbi Nachman starts the lesson. And then he goes on, and though the intellect cannot grasp the light of the Infinite One, the racing of the mind nevertheless pursues it. Even though the intellect can't grasp the infinite light, it's the tendency of the mind to race after it, right? And by virtue of this racing, the intellect is able to grasp it in an aspect of reaching and not reaching, okay? For the truth is that it is not possible to grasp it because this light, this infinite light, is on a level above Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. That's how Rabbi Nachman opens the lesson. So take a look. The verse reads from Echa, Kol Rodfeha, all those who run after her. The Maggid HaMizrach explains it as Rodef Yud K, pursuing Yud K. What is it? What is Yud K? In Hashem's 4 letters of his name, Yud K Vav K, you have broken down in these 4 letters 4 groupings of the 10 sfirot. Okay, Yud, the first Yud is called in the Kabbalah Chokhmah. That's like knowledge. The first Hey of Yud K Vav K is Bina, understanding. So already those 2 are the intellect. Yud K of Hashem's Yud K Vav K correspond to the intellect. Okay, Vav is the 6 sfirot after Chokhmah Bina. When you join Chokhmah Bina, they form Dat, or sometimes it's called Keter Chokhmah Bina, which also is dependent on the joining of Chokhmah and Bina. So Chokhmah Bina, they create a third type of sfira. So that the 3 are taken care of in Yud K. And then you have the 6 of the lower 7 sfirot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, that's 6. That's in the Vav, which is numerically equal to 6 in this case. And then the last Hey of Yud K Vav K is the final sfira of Malchut. Okay? So in our context, we said, Rabbi Nachman said, in Hebrew it reads as Redifa de Machshava lemidaf abatre. It is the way of the mind to pursue the intellect, the nature, the tendency of the mind is to race and pursue the infinite light. This is hinted to in this verse. Rodfea, all those who are Rodefka. You're a Jew who wants to connect to God. You want to connect to the perception. You want to not necessarily understand Hashem, because you can't understand Hashem, but you want as maximum capacity as you can to see and understand Hashem in your life, to see and understand your connection to Hashem in your life. That's what you're looking for. So that's hinted to in Rodfeha, Rodefka. So now what is Rabbi Nachman saying in our paragraph that we're getting into today? The idea of the Keter, which is also created when joining Chokhmah Bina, you have the Keter also. The nature of the Keter is, in order for a person to really pursue the infinite light, he gets pushed back. He gets slapped in the face. And it's really a stage of growing. He's supposed to take it properly. You can only take it properly if now you're someone who works on serving Hashem b'simcha. When you always are working on simcha, you take every slap in the face as a step for growth. If now you're not someone who's working on simcha, and therefore you're always being attacked by ulterior motives and self-centeredness and feelings of haughtiness. So when a person like that gets a slap in the face, he takes it so personally. Hashem doesn't want me. He doesn't like me. He doesn't need me. And the person takes the slap as a real slap. But the person who's always trying to be positive and is serving Hashem will take and read any slap that comes his way, even a slap that comes after 1,000 slaps. And the normal person was saying, well, I guess it's over. But this person saying, no, as long as I feel it's not over, it's not over. And I know the real truth is that Hashem wants me to come. He just knows my capacity that I can handle 1,000 slaps. Because if that wasn't the case, he wouldn't slap me 1,000 times and push me back. So a setback is now like a pushback. Now, Vav K of Hashem's Yud K Vav K are the 7 lower sfirot that we have interaction with in this world. So it's as if it's saying, the verse, going back to the verse, Kol Rodef Ka, anyone who's looking to come close to Hashem, you're looking to have Hashem in your life, to have that connection, just to have that intellectual contemplation and perception of a godliness in your life. So what do you get? What's the pie in the face that you get? Kol rodfea hisig, you reach Vav-K, which is the last two letters. It's like a down. Yud-K is considered the forward part of Hashem's Yud-K Vav-K name. The Yud-K is the beginning part. It's the part it's the maximum climax of experiencing Hashem's essence, if you want to say, or light in this world is Yud-K. So anyone who's Rodef Yud-K, so let him go further. No, he's Sig Vav-He. We push him backwards to Vav-K, which is the lower part of Yud-K Vav-K, the part of Hashem's revelation in this world. If you remember, we went into this a lot. The idea of the word mitzvah. Mitzvah. You remember Mem Tzadik Vav-He? In Mem Tzadik Vav-He, you have hidden there Yud-K. The Mem corresponds to the Yud. You remember in the Gematria called Atbash. Atbash, as we take the 22 letters, it's again a recap. We take the 22 letters of Hashem, of the Hebrew alphabet, so it's 22 letters in total, and we fold them like this. So Aleph now corresponds to Tav, Bet corresponds to Shin, okay? The third letter Gimel is Resh, and so on. So in that format, Mem, when you fold the Mem, which is on this side, it's corresponding to Yud. It's the 10th letter on the first side, lapping on the second side. 23rd letter, I assume, right? 23rd, 20, 21, 22, 11, sorry, 10, 11, 12, sorry. It's a 13th letter, sorry. And then you have Tzadik, which corresponds to Hey. And then Vav-K is Vav-K, the same Vav-K. Meaning, in Hashem's Yud-K Vav-K name, the mitzvah accessibility we have in this world, which part of Hashem's name do we grasp, so to speak, when holding the etrog, when doing the tefillin, when saying a bracha, when keeping Shabbat, when keeping Yom Kippur? Which part of the mitzvah is accessible to you? It's the Vav-K. The hidden part is in Mem Tzadik Yud-K. That's the hidden part. So that means, why is it hidden? Because it's on a higher level. This world can't stand the intensity of Yud-K. So it's hidden in Mem Tzadik. When you do a mitzvah, we went into this, it's unbelievable. When you hold on to the tefillin, the lulav, or tzedakah, any mitzvah you're doing, you're actually holding, technically, Hashem. That's crazy to say this, but that's the Shekhinah. The divine presence of Hashem is in your hands when you do a mitzvah. The mitzvah is a connector. It's connecting you to God, okay? In those connectors, Mem Tzadik is hidden. It's concealed because it can't be revealed at full force in a revealed level because the world will disappear. It's connected to the infinite light. Vav-K, on the other hand, is revealed. So going back to the verse, Kol Rodfea, all those who want to reach Hashem, Yud-K. So what do you get? Hisig Vav-K. When does this take place more than any other time of the year? Bein HaMeitzarim. These 3 weeks are the most special time of you yearning, to have a yearning to connect to Yud-K like no other time of the year. No other time of the year brings out the yearning to the morning period of the 3 weeks. When you realize how much you need the Beit HaMikdash in your life, when you realize how much you need tzaddikim to guide you, to give you light and enthusiasm and a boost in simcha, in Torah, in prayer, when you realize how much you need it and you're lacking it, so this intensifies the yearning, okay? So this happens in the 3 weeks. So, and then what is the initial stage for getting somewhere with that? Hisig Vav-K. They throw you back to this world, to reconnect to the Vav-K of this world, of the mitzvah of this world. If you accept it properly, then you are entitled to bypass the Yud-K to reach the infinite life visitation. That's just what's happening in these 3 weeks. I don't have a chidush, but we'll take time, huh?
I feel very shut out, huh?
Right? No, because of what? Because of what I said?
No, just stop. I don't want to. I just want to take it back and land the cats.
Right, that's the attitude of these 3 weeks. You just want to take it back. But
You said you're to the Eid guy. I don't have that yearning.
That's why the Arizal suggested we take half an hour every day after noon to mourn over the temple. The mourning lets out all the yearning that's built up and not coming out. That's true. To explain this, we feel like out of it. Okay? Why do we feel out of it? Because we're meant to feel what it is to live without a light of the Beit HaMikdash. What is about the light of the tzaddikim? It's done purposely to show a person how on their own, without tzaddikim, without the light of the Beit HaMikdash, you can't do anything. You don't want to do anything. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to learn. I don't want to dive in. Why is all this happening in these 3 weeks more than any other time? The scientists will say, well, it's summertime and the heat causes the brain condensation. I don't know. They give some scientific explanation why you're out of it and I need a summer vacation. The real reason is because they're giving you to taste full force what it is to be without Beit HaMikdash, what it is to be without Tzaddikim. Okay, all year round, we're technically without Tzaddikim, without Beit HaMikdash. We mourn over the Beit HaMikdash every night, technically. You're supposed to. The first halacha in Shulchan Aruch is a God-fearing Jew should get up at midnight and mourn over the destruction of the temple every day. A normal day, okay? Shabbat doesn't apply, Yom Tov doesn't apply, Chol HaMoed, Rosh Chodesh, happy days, okay? Fine, but the majority of the days of the year, yes, there is a concept to get up and mourn over the destruction of the temple, which includes the concealment of the tzaddikim. In these 3 weeks, it's a national experience because all year round, all of those people who really care about it do it, or those people who are really looking for that do it. In the 3 weeks, against your will, everyone on a national level is meant to feel the lacking of the Beit HaMikdash. You feel it, and it's expressed in what? That I'm out of it. And they started justifying, oh, it's summertime and vacation. Why in this period from Shavuot until the 3 weeks, all the Parshiot spoke about difficulties against Moshe Rabbeinu and slander and deaths and plagues and immorality, Zimri, Shlach, Chukat, the death of Miriam, the death of Aaron, okay? The slander against the manna, the snakes, okay? Korach, all these crazy Parshiot are dafka between Shavuot and the beginning of the 3 weeks, which is the beginning of the summertime. This is what's happening. We're now experiencing, we're living the Torah. It happens to fall in the summertime. Who's to blame? Who's the cause? And who's the result, the effect? The cause is, what we're saying, is the machloket against the tzaddikim, the conflict, strife, concealing where the tzaddikim are, the strife and conflict within a person and with his fellows, whatever, with Am Yisrael, within themselves. If we were okay by now, Mashiach would have been here by now. If we were okay, Am Yisrael, Mashiach would have been here by now. Okay, we're not okay. All the groups and sections in the religious world, the Hasidic world, the this world, and between each other, okay? All this is causing that there's a concealment. So our work is mamash to feel the
better. Be like in a die.
Huh? What?
It's not gonna be like when you're dying, you're going off.
Why? No, we're not gonna die.
Not gonna be able to do any mitzvahs after Mashiach is coming.
Why? Mitzvah will continue. The Rambam says the difference between now and between when Mashiach comes is only shibud malchuyot. All the mitzvah are going to continue. In other words, who's the king? Trump won't be the king. Biden won't be the king. Okay, the king will be Malach HaMashiach. He'll be the king. That's the only difference. And the Rambam says your how you perform the mitzvah is going to be in a totally different perspective. Totally different perspective. Okay. Just wanted to go quickly into another thing. I mentioned it maybe one class before, but it just needs clarification. In the parsha, because we can't just read it and just go on. In Parshat Pinchas, it was such an unbelievable thing about the 5 daughters of Tzelofchad, how they asked such a good question, and Moshe Rabbeinu did not know the answer. The 5 daughters of Tzelofchad, who purposely delayed getting married for 20 years. They waited because they said, we need the right time to ask this question. And only once we clarify the question can we get married, because our being married is dependent on the question. What was the question they asked? The question they asked, if now when the Jews inherit the Holy Land and one of the inheritors leaves behind no sons, only daughters, so who gets his portion of the land of Israel? If now the daughters are not considered a child, so the mother should do Yibum, should do the levirate marriage, she should marry her brother-in-law, right? That's Yibum.
Children.
Huh?
Traditionally.
Okay, the halacha is like this. Yibum takes place only if the man did not leave behind any children.
Yeah.
So the daughters of Tzelofchad asked a good question. What's the question they asked? Now, if our father, he passed away, he left behind no sons, so let us inherit the land. And if now we're not entitled to the land because we're not considered official children, so if we're not considered official children, it's as if our father had no children at all.
Because they're girls.
Because they're girls. So that's the question. He said, if now we are not considered children. Let our mother do yibum. And if we are, that's the question. And if we are considered children, so give us the land. Moshe Rabbeinu did not know the answer. There's a few opinions in the Gemara. But Rashi sticks, huh? So now they wanted to wait to see, because now if now they will inherit the land. So they want to make sure that they, first of all, they knew the answer, that they have to marry someone from their tribe. So now that they wait for this to take place. Because now, if now they don't inherit the land no matter what, so they can marry whoever they want. So they were waiting to find good people from their tribe, but only on condition that the answer is clarified. So they waited. So the Gemara says, but wait a second, they were over 40 years old when this took place, because their father, Tzelofchad, was killed because he was Mekoshesh Etzim. It was over like the beginning of the desert. It was the first Shabbat that the Jews did in the desert. So it was over 40 years. Okay? So they waited over 40 years to get married. And the halacha is, the nature is, a woman who doesn't get pregnant before the age of 40 can't get pregnant after the age of 40. Only a woman, so they risked it. They risked getting, so they relied, the Gemara says, they knew a miracle would happen to them. They relied on their righteousness, okay? And because of that, they merited to have children, even though they got married after the age of 40. Fine. So now, the question is, Moshe Rabbeinu did not know the answer. What in the world is going on? More than this, huh? One second. More than this, what did I want to say? You know, try not to ask questions, because I lose the track. When you ask questions, we lose it, and then everyone will lose out. Let's try to leave it for the end, okay? The daughters of Tzelofchad, they waited, okay? And Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know the answer. That's a big thing. And they knew something. Rashi says, Melamdenu, that they saw something that even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't see. What in the world is going on? Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't know. More than this, when did they come to ask the question? They came to ask the question when Moshe Rabbeinu was in the Bein HaMeitzarim learning with Elazar. Aaron already passed away. So Moshe, Elazar, and the yeshiva, they came at a good time. When did they come? They came at the moment that Moshe Rabbeinu was learning the laws of inheriting the land. That's when they came to ask. They were chachmaniyot, they were smart. They didn't just come and throw a question to just throw everybody off. They came, asked the question when they were talking about it. That's why they waited so long. They waited for when Moshe Rabbeinu would discuss this halacha in the Beit Midrash, and then the question was asked, okay? The question was asked at that time. So they were very smart. More than that, again, they bypassed Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know the halacha. So the pasuk says, that Moshe presented their mishpatan. He presented their law, this halachic question, before Hashem. Rashi says a few things. He says, he says this elsewhere also, that Moshe Rabbeinu is so great, whenever he wants, we can talk to Hashem. He just pulls out a question. Hey Hashem, I have a question. That's unbelievable. But also, the word mishpatan, the nun is written big. In most Sifrei Torah, you'll see in your Chumash, the nun of mishpatan is written big to indicate, Rabbeinu Bachye says, this indicates that this question emanates from the 50th level. Okay? That means it was bypassing Moshe Rabbeinu's level. Moshe Rabbeinu was under 50, under the level of 50th level of holiness, which is the Keter. He was below that. So he had no grasp of that. And the Rashi then brings down what Hashem says. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, Ken benot Tzelofchad dovrot. They're speaking correct. Rashi says, this is how the Torah is written before me. Hashem says, this is how the law is written before me. That when a man doesn't leave behind sons, only daughters, they in place can inherit the land. Okay? When they heard that, so they were given the law that they had to marry specifically men from their own tribe. That way the land won't go to another tribe. They were descended from the tribe of Menashe, Yosef and Menashe and Yosef. Okay? And in this way they inherited the land. Okay? So the question is, how could it be that they perceived something Moshe Rabbeinu didn't? Number two, why does this mitzvah stick out more than any other mitzvah? There's 613 mitzvot. One of them is this mitzvah, this halacha, that a woman inherits the land in place of a son. If there's no son, you give over the land to the woman. Why does this mitzvah stick out more than Tefillin, more than Lulav, more than Yom Kippur? What in the world is going on? Okay, so these 5 daughters, okay, this is the idea. They represented the epitome of a Jewish woman. The Arizal goes very deep in the significance of their names. Chogla, Milka, Tirza, they all represent very, very high things. These were classic example of real tzadkaniyot, because it says they were tzadkaniyot, chachmaniyot, they were wise, they were righteous, there were many virtues giving to these 5 women. They represent the maximum crux of a Jewish woman's capacity. This, Rav Nosson explains, is what a woman is. A woman is, like it says in Mishlei, Eshet Chayil Ateret Bala. A normal Jewish woman, a God-fearing woman, the goal of an Eshet Chayil is to be what? The crown of her husband. What does that mean? That the woman is able to bring her husband to receive from the light of the Keter. How does she do that? Like we said about the Yud K and the Vav K. The woman is the main one responsible for pushing back the man. He wants to advance, wants to grow forward, but he doesn't have the vessels to receive the infinite light. He needs to be pushed back. The woman is the best one in the world to do that job for the husband. She's the best one to get the husband to go back, but for his benefit. So Nosson says, on one hand, a woman is below the husband because she pushes him backwards and she's dependent on this husband's management of advancing and bringing in shefa. This is like the ketubah of the husband and wife. The ketubah, the man says, I will sustain you, I will take care of you, with the shirt off of my back. The man's job is to give, the woman's job is to receive. So on one hand, a woman's a receiver, which means she's technically under the husband. But on the other hand, she's a keter. Her light emanates, Rav Nosson explains, from a level above the husband. Why? Because she's the one responsible for activating the keter. When we say this keter, when Yud K is done, it activates the keter. The keter is what prevents a person from going too fast, too forward. Person is not ready, he will go and be merged in infinite light and just disappear. A person needs breaks in life. You need breaks to have experience of the light. So this is what the woman does. So on this side, the woman, in this case, these 5 daughters who were tzadikot, they had a full perception of the keter. More than this, their father, Tzelofchad, he was chayav karet. Because he desecrated Shabbat, he was mekoshesh etzim. He's the one who collected the twigs and branches on Shabbat. The Gemara says that he was really a tzaddik. He did it purposely to teach the Jewish people the punishment of death for transgressing Shabbat. That's what happened on the second Shabbat. The second Shabbat in the desert, the second, sorry about that. He already transgressed the Shabbat and he was killed with skila. And he was chayav, the karet excision penalty. Okay? So watch this. The daughters said to Moshe Rabbeinu, we're the daughters of Tzelofchad, who wasn't killed in the plague or wasn't one of those who tried to force their way to the land of Israel when there was the blemish of the spies, and Hashem told the Jewish people, you're not entering the land, you're all going to die in the desert. So there's a group of Jews who were ma'apilim. They tried to go forcefully to the land of Israel. They're all killed also. They were wiped out, those Jews. So he's not from those, they said. Rather, he died b'chet'o. He died from his own sin, which is the sin of transgressing Shabbat, which is libel karet. Why did they say all that? Because they were the rectification of the karet. Karet is the same letters as keter. These 4 daughters were maximum capacity of ateret ba'ala, to be a crown. Okay, and that fixed the blemish of Tzelofchad, who was karet. The same letters. Okay. Number 3, the next point is this mitzvah. Why is it so hard for Moshe Rabbeinu to understand whether or not a woman can inherit the land of Israel or not? So this is the whole sechel of the keter. Eretz Yisrael is a land of giving. Eretz Yisrael is to give. The woman, her nature is to receive. That's how a woman is made physically, and also, like we said, in husband and wife normal relationship, which is why woman's lib is terrible. Woman's lib destroyed this. They try to make the woman equal to the husband or even higher. It ruined it. It ruined the secret of marriage. Let the husband be the giver. Let him do the job. If the woman's a giver and the husband's a giver, so there's conflict. No one's receiving from anyone. If she's living her own life and he's living his own life, how can you have shalom? There has to be giver and receiver. Okay? So Eretz Yisrael's makeup is to give. That's how it should be normally. Now in Galut, it's the exact opposite. That the Jews in Eretz Yisrael are dependent mainly on the tzedakah and donations of the Jews in the diaspora. It should be the opposite. But because we're in Galut, it's the opposite. But technically, when the Jews, for example, went in to inherit the land in the time of Yoshua bin Nun, in the time of the daughters of Tzelofchad, so the nature of the land is receiving mode. So who should be owner of such land? A man who's also, giving mode. Sorry. The land is in giving mode. The man also is in giving mode. What's crazy is when a woman who's in receiving mode connects to Eretz Yisrael, she's in giving mode, and she's the owner of that land. It doesn't. It's beyond capacity. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't fathom, couldn't pick in. That's why Hashem had to come in and say, "Ken benot Tzelofchad." This is a level of the Keter. This you can't understand. The two opposites in one. How could you have giving and receiving together? This is the sechel, which is incomprehensible. Why that? But the halacha is, yes, it can happen. How? We can't explain it. This is just an idea on the parsha. Okay. Now we have to read the questions from the participants here. Okay, the questions. There was only one question. There's no more questions at this point. Okay, we'll leave questions to the end. Fine. We're going to continue now. We have to explain. We explained last week's class. If you notice, we got cut off in the middle. It looks like from heaven that happened because we didn't explain things at all properly, and probably even off. We are now going to explain these concepts with hopefully much more clarity. Okay. First is needed an introduction on a sphera, which is an energy level that Hashem uses and used in the creation of the world and the continual existence of the world. Each sphera is interconnected with another sphera. The interconnection is that it can receive energy and light from a sphera above it, and it can give off to a sphera below it. So because a sphera, every level of energy has two parts to it. There's the receiving part and the giving part. For example, the sphera of Tiferet, let's say, it receives energy from the sphera above it, and Tiferet will then give off energy from it to the sphera below it, like Netzach, which is after Tiferet. So because each sphera has two parts to it, so the Kabbalah calls the sphirot as having two parts, the Pnimi, the inner part, and the Chitzoni. The inner part of the sphera is what receives from a sphera above it, and the external part is what gives to the lower one. Just like, for example, a person has hands, okay? The hands that you give with, you give of yourself, you do, they're reflecting your pnimiut. You're giving, okay? But you can't give from inside you. I'll give my life for you. I can give. You give with the hands. The hands are considered in the human body external. The actual body is here, and the hands are considered like extensions. It's like an external part of the actual person. The actual person is his brain, his heart, which is located in the middle. The arms are considered to be external, outside of what's inside. Okay? Now, the inside of a person is what receives from what's above it. Okay, for example, now, you have a rich person and a poor person, okay? Or two people, one is asking for charity, another one is giving the charity. The one giving the charity, no problem, I have $5 in my pocket, he gives $5 to the poor person. The poor person, when he's receiving, what's receiving the $5? Just his hands? No, his heart is receiving, his brain. You've really helped him. He's in such a tight situation that his brain has become so tightened, his heart has become so tightened and miserable. So his pnimi, the poor person's pnimiut, his innerness is suffering. So now when the person gives him with his hands tzedakah, which is, it's external for me, it's nothing. I can do that with my hands. It's something external of me that I'm giving. You're actually satisfying the internal of the poor person. So too in the Sfirot. The Netzach is dependent on receiving from Tiferet. In contrast to Tiferet, Netzach is considered poor. It needs to receive light from the Sfira above it. So the Tiferet, the external part of the Sfira will give, and the internal of the one below it will receive. So now how does that take place? The internal is considered as if swallowing the external of above it. Okay, the external of above it is going in, the internal becomes external to that. So in other words, the Tiferet, the hands of Tiferet, are now enveloped by the internal of Netzach, even though internal is considered more refined than external. But because Netzach is on a lower level, like the poor person's internal is being satisfied by the external of the giver. The giver in this case is a person higher than the poor person. He's giving him. I'm giving him $5. So in a sense, I'm standing above him because I can help him out. So I'm giving with an external expression. I'm giving some money. For me, that's nothing. It's external. But you're satisfying the internal of the poor person. It's like the sphera, the lower sphera is mamash. The internal part is swallowing it and enveloping it, taking it in because I really benefited. So this is how in the worlds of the sphirot it works. You have the chitzoni and the pnimi, the external and the internal. So that's what we said in the last class. And we'll go into this now right now. We'll look in paragraph here, the Likutey Moharan, lesson 24, paragraph number 7. Here there's something which totally sticks out. Okay? He starts out with saying, from the innerness of the blessings. What is the innerness of the blessings? This now is something very tricky. Okay? When now, let's with this in mind of external, internal, how it works, we can now understand the whole flow of this lesson. Rabbi Nachman said, I'll recap the lesson with this in mind of external, internal, that when a Jew works on being happy, and he uses that happiness to serve Hashem with happiness. In other words, he tries his best to appreciate, that I can say a blessing, that I can put on tefillin, that I have a mezuzah, I have tzitzit, I have Shabbat, I light Shabbos candles, I say kiddush, and I do motzian, and I'm happy about it. I appreciate it. This happiness is so potent, so powerful, that you actually help to lift up the mitzvah from the darkness of this world. Because before any Jew does a mitzvah, even in potential form, it's not yet actual. It's still in potential. You haven't yet done the mitzvah. Before you do any mitzvah, it's considered to be sunken in darkness, in the domain of evil, in the klipot, the impurity. And your job in the mitzvah is not just to do it, but to elevate it from the darkness, from that where it's placed. How could you do that? By doing the mitzvah with joy. When you do the mitzvah with joy, you lift up the mitzvah. Okay. So now in our context, now this malchut, the mitzvah, who's considered dormant and in darkness and everything, is called the sphera of Malkhut. Malkhut is the lowest sphera. Malchut means the kingship, because what reveals the kingship of Hashem more than anything else in this world? The mitzvahs. When you do a mitzvah, you are actually making a statement by the doing of the mitzvah that Hashem is the king. How do I know that? I'm doing this mitzvah. Why are you doing that? Why do you have payas? Why do you have beard? Because Hashem said so. Why do you keep Shabbat? Because Hashem said so. There's a king. I'm doing what the king tells me to do. The king says in the Torah, do this and this and that. That's why I'm doing it. So when you do a mitzvah, you're making a recognition of the king in the world. So all mitzvot are called malchut. So now, the mitzvah now goes up. Which part of the mitzvah goes up? The internal part of the mitzvah goes up and becomes enclosed by what's called netzach hod yesod. In other words, now, you did the mitzvah b'simcha, so now the legs, which are called netzach hod yesod, the 3 lower sphirot, they extend, if you want to say, they make themselves available to extend to Malchut to pick it up. Malchut now is able to go up to the area of the legs, which are Netzach Hod Yesod, the 3 lower Sfirot. But which part of Malchut up? The internal part. Sorry, the internal now becomes external to Netzach Hod Yesod external. And now Netzach Hod Yesod external becomes internal to the Malchut because it went up a level. Okay? And now when the next stage, now when you've done this mitzvah, now the mitzvah has capacity to get everybody to wake up. It does what it does. A mitzvah, the goal of a mitzvah is to get the world to wake up and come back to Hashem. That's the goal of the mitzvah. Like we said, the whole idea of mitzvah performance is to make Hashem known in the world. Once you've done the initial stage of doing the mitzvah b'simcha, okay? So then you can now get the mitzvah does what it's supposed to do to get the whole world to serve Hashem. We didn't explain one thing. Where do you get the strength to do a mitzvah v'simcha? Yeah, you may ask, okay, I need simcha to do a mitzvah. Where does that energy come from? This is where Rabbi Nachman teaches in this lesson, the Ketoret. The Ketoret is so powerful. Reciting the Ketoret today, or in the time of the temple, the offering of the Ketoret, is so powerful that the energy of the Ketoret goes down to where you are in the darkness. It can infuse you with simcha, and now you can do the mitzvah now b'simcha. That's why it's so important to say the Ketoret, not to skip the Ketoret in your daily prayer service. We say it 3 times a day, twice in Shacharit and once in Mincha. Don't skip it, because this is a key for having simcha attitude all day long. It gives you that push to remember to be happy. You know you have to be happy. I know, but when you come to do a mitzvah, you're so overwhelmed by the darkness and confusion and this and that. So the Ketoret helps you to have that initiative of simcha to do the mitzvah. That's why it's so important, the mitzvah, the Ketoret. And we'll explain soon why there's 11. There's 11 fragrances corresponding to what? We'll go into that very soon. So once Malchut, the mitzvah has been lifted up to Netzachod Yesod, so now the mitzvah has momentum, and now it can activate the hands, which are the source of bracha. So now also Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, the external part becomes a part of Netzachod Yesod's internal part. It's like every part, the internal becomes external of the one above it, and that internal goes up, okay? So in other words, Malchut becomes external to Netzachod Yesod, Netzachod Yesod becomes external to Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, which is activating the blessings. And like we said, it's up to you what blessings come down. You can choose the Ferrari and the nice fancy mansion and the retreat in Maui and all that stuff, or you can choose Sechel. I want to understand Hashem. I want to serve Hashem. I want more depth of bracha in Torah, in intellect. It's called Birkat HaSechel. I choose that I want above all this mundanity. If it's just mundanity, that's it. Of what purpose is it? Let me use the mundanity for something higher. Let me aim that the bracha should be like King Solomon. Hashem asked King Solomon, what do you want? You want oil that open up for you the gateways of wisdom, or do you want wealth? So what did King Solomon say? I want the gateways of the Chokhmah, which is why he was considered the wisest of all men. And automatically he had wealth. He was smart. He made the right choice. When now you pick the right thing in life, everything becomes wealth. You're never lacking. Right? You have now the happiness for wherever Hashem sends you. So there's no reason for Hashem to test you with poverty. You don't need a test of poverty right now, because you find Hashem and satisfaction in everything, because you're open to see that whatever Hashem sends you, that's exactly what I need. So if you're that type of person, there's no need for Hashem to test you with poverty, because you're doing pretty well and you're very wealthy with whatever Hashem sends you, you're happy with it, okay? So now we're Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, and Klod is Chokhmah, Bina, Dat. So again, every sphera, lower sphera, receives from the upper one. So in a sense, it becomes like a garment. It takes in. I'm a receiver. It's receiving. It's like a cup. It's a cup receiving from what's above it. This all is true up to Chokhmah, Bina, Dat, of the world of Asiyah, the first world. When you start doing a mitzvah, the mitzvah is in this world of action, okay? We now mentioned by that 10 sphirot. There's an 11th sphira, it's called Keter, the Keter of Asiyah. Keter of Asiyah works totally different. Before we go on, let's explain what happens next. Chokhmah Bina Dat, okay, of this world of Asiyah. What does it include? What does it become a cup for? It becomes, this is what the Arizal explains, it becomes a cup, get ready for this, to Netzachod Yesod of the next world. If you remember, to recap, there are 4 universes, 4 dimensions, 4 worlds, I don't know how you want to call them, but there's 4 levels of existence in this creation. When we interact with physicality, it's called the lowest world of Asiyah, of action. Above that is the world of Yetzira, formation, where things are seen differently. Things are more on a spiritual perspective, but not fully, but more spiritual. Then you have the world above that. The level is called Bria, of creation, if you want to say Bria. And then the highest one, which is closest to the infinite light, it's called Atzilut, from the language of Etzel, next to. You're very close to Hashem. Each of these four worlds have 10 sfirot. Okay, that's what we say. That we went up to all these sfirot in the world of Asiyah. Your goal is now to go up to the next world. The clearest place where this takes place is in the morning prayers, Shacharit. The Shacharit morning prayer is broken into 8 sections, both divided by 2. So one section of 4 and another section of 4. What are the 4 sections of the davening? The first section is called the Korbanot, the initial part of davening, Adon Olam, the Akedah, the Korbanot, the Ktoret, up to Hodu. The second part of davening is called Hodu, Baruch Shamar, Psukei de Zimra, up to the blessings of Kriyat Shema, Baruch Hu, Kaddish Baruch Hu. The third part is the brachas, the blessings over Kriyat Shema and the Kriyat Shema itself, leading up to the Amidah Shmon Esrei prayer. And the highest section, the 4th section, is the Amidah. These 4, every morning, are you going through all 4 universes. The first initial stage is the first world of Asiyah. The goal is to get into the world of Asiyah. You start off dead. When you wake up in the morning, you just woken up from 1/60th of death. You were technically dead when you were sleeping. So when you wake up, it's now a beginning part. A lot of simcha is needed in the morning. That's why it's so difficult for people to get up in the morning and to wake up on the right side of bed, like they say the expression, to be b'simcha, because now you have a battle to do, to fight with the klipot, to do all the mitzvot. In the morning by a man, there's tons of mitzvot. There's modani, by everyone, also by women. There's netilat yadayim, the bracha netilat yadayim, asher yatzar, lokai neshama, the morning blessings of the Torah. For men, then there's, if you're capable, going to the mikveh, and then the davening, putting on tefillin and talit. Wow, okay? And there's a lot leading all that. And all this requires an extra dosage of simcha, even before reciting the Ketoret. We say the Ketoret in the first section of the davening because a lot of simcha is needed in order to open up the mind to be able to daven properly. The mind, most people, the mind is so constricted because they're not happy. They don't have true happiness. People are they're still sleeping. They're still out of it for whatever reason. Okay, so a lot is needed. A lot of simcha is needed to open up the mind. Rav Nosson explains that the power of simcha, it opens up its marchiv et hamochim. It expands a person's mind. Okay. The first section of the davening, again, is the first of these 4 universes called Asiyah. That's why there we say the Ketoret, to lift up our mitzvot, which is going to be the morning prayers, out of the darkness and to bring it up. Next stage is the Psukei de Zimra, which is technically the connection between the leg sfirot, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, connecting them to the hands, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet. Okay? So then the brachas of Kriyat Shema are connecting Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet to Chochma Bina Da'at, okay? And then finally, the actual Shmon Esrei is now the goal of the blessing of the intellect, Chochma Bina Da'at, which is represented in the 4th world, and it's a prerequisite to perceiving the infinite light. If you merit, in the Shmon Esrei davening, you will experience the infinite light, okay? When is it normally experienced, by the way? The Arizal explains, the crux of the Shmona Esrei prayer is at the very last blessing, Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom is considered what's called a complete unification. A person has become totally unified. Once that happens, and a person is ready now to advance, look what happens. Right after the Amidah prayer, we do Tachanun. What happened? Tachanun is like such a setback. The Arizal says, that when a person is doing vidui and then tachanun, where you put your hand on your head, or some don't even do that. The Sephardim, for example, they say Psalm 25 without putting their hand on their head, and the Ashkenazim or Nusach Sfard, they put their hand on the hand on the head, but they don't say that Psalm. Chabad, I heard they do both. They do 25 and they put the hand on their head, which it's all different customs. What's happening there? The Arizal says is that purposely. You go back down to the depths of the darkness. What happened? I just got out of there. I just got out of bed and I'm building myself up. And now I have to throw myself back down purposely. The answer is yes. Because now you have reached the Keter, which is taking place at the end of the Shmon Esrei prayer. And the nature, like we said about Yud Ke Vav Ke at the beginning, the nature of the Keter is to push you back to build vessels to eventually perceive the infinite light. Right after the Shmoneh Esrei prayer, you have the slap of the vidui, which you go right back down. But after you go back down, you come back up to where you left off, which is after now the Shmoneh Esrei prayer. And then the next sections are another 4 sections. So you have Ashrei, Uva Letzion, the Shir Shel Yom, okay, the Ktoret, and then Aleinu Neshabeach. So those 4 sections are going back down. I went deep down in the Vidui, and then afterwards they come back up. We're left off. The 4 worlds now going downwards. So I had the Shmoneh Esrei, I have now Uva Letzion, Ashrei, Ktoret, and then Aleinu Neshabeach going back down. So another the descent of these 4 worlds. Okay, this is what happens every day, where every Jew has exposure to all 4 universes. So now on a practical level, you can experience the difference of these 4 universes and the attitude you develop in that part of the davening. For example, when you're saying the korbanot and the ktoret and the korban tamid and the mishnayot, whatever's in the siddur, ezo mikoman, and the binding of Yitzchak, the akeda, there's a certain attitude. If you have a merit to daven that part of a clear head, so you'll notice that there's a certain attitude of the initial part. It's more of a fighting attitude. It's a struggle attitude. Psukei de Zimra is where your heart begins to be expressive. Wow. And now you feel a type of an arousal to connect to Hashem. That's the Psukei de Zimra, if you merit to connect to the words. And then the blessings of the Kriyat Shema and the Kriyat Shema are another attitude of that now of, wow, I'm now connecting to God. To have the blessings come down and feel the energy go into all my blood and my organs and everything. And I say Shema with a total self-sacrifice to connect to Hashem now. Okay? And then finally the Shmoneh Esrei, which is silent, quiet. You can't even make a whisper according to our result. You can't even hear your own words. You should daven, ideally, tip-top quiet. No sound, nothing. What is this? Because you're beginning to be one with Hashem. There's blessings, you're requesting, but it's a requesting on a format of divine awareness at a high level. You're atzilut, you're next to God. That's why you don't have to scream. The idea of not saying out loud the Shmoneh Esrei, one of the explanations is, you're right next to God. You don't have to scream, he can hear you. You don't even have to whisper, he's right next to you. Silently, he can pick it up. That's how you're so one with Hashem that he can pick up your words just by moving the lips, okay? So these are expressions of these 4 worlds. Every Jew goes through these, okay? So now the goal of this in the morning prayer, we went up, but we went down, okay? But the goal eventually is to go up to another level, to reach higher levels. This was all in the first world, Asiyah, okay? You came to master. You're going back down after Aleinu Neshabeach, is because now you've mastered the world of Asiyah, technically with the morning prayer. So you can roam around the world of Asiyah. But there's other worlds, the next world of Yetzira, Bira, Atzilut, which are higher expectations of experience in my daily devotions. It could be that a person's hitbodedut in that day will have a more higher connection from the world of Yetzira or Bria or Atzilut. It could be saying Tikkun HaKlali, learning his Gemara, learning his Chumash. The mitzvot you do during the day can give you access to the other 3 worlds. You don't know. It's all dependent on how much you want, okay? So now, the thing is, the Arizal says something really strange, is that the Chochmah Bina Dat of this world of Asiyah, when it goes up, it doesn't go up to, now the lowest of the 10 swords is Malkhut of the next stretch, the world of Yetzira. It doesn't enclose Malkhut, it skips Malkhut, goes up to the Netzach Hod Yesod of the next world. What happened? What happened to Malchut? So the Arizal says something unbelievable. Okay? What filled in the Chochmah Bin Adat? In other words, the Chitzoniyut of Chochmah Bin Adat became filled with Emunah. If you remember, to recap, we said in the last classes that the goal of knowledge is to fill it with Emunah, faith. Your goal of learning Torah is to strengthen your emunah, meaning what? To strengthen how much you don't know about Hashem, because you can never reach Hashem. So why learn Torah? If I can never reach Hashem, let me just be an emunah Jew, Just have simple faith. Don't force me and push me to finish the Talmud, to finish Kabbalah, to finish Midrash. Let me just understand basic halacha. I'm just doing what I have to do with emunah, and that's it. Why do I need to enhance my knowledge of Torah? The more you enhance your knowledge of Torah, and you're learning for the right intent, the right direction, which is to strengthen your emunah, which means you're coming to try to, as much as you can, come close to Hashem. With that intent, they grant you as a gift that the more you learn, the more emunah becomes enhanced. The more you see how much you don't know of Hashem. You open the new dimension and you just open the new world. Oh my God, I know nothing of this. No, nothing. What has actually happened? Your emunah went up. That's what we want. Hashem wants that the emunah should be a person's first and foremost thing. Like the verse reads, and Pirkei Avot says this, Chavakuk v'hemidan alachat. Chavakuk, the prophet, came along and based the whole Torah on one verse. What's that one verse, which is the key for the whole rest of the Torah? The tzaddik be'emunato yichyeh. The tzaddik lives by his faith. What gives you life and chayut in your Yiddishkeit, in your daily basis of connecting to Hashem? It's emunah. So that's the case. Emunah is something that has to be always renewed and advanced. We say there's a pasuk that says in Eicha, Chadashim la bekarim, Rabba emunatecha. We say every morning in Modani, Rabba emunatecha. Then in the morning when you wake up, the emunah is supposed to be enhanced, is more, but it's also based on how you went to sleep. How you went to sleep is dependent on what you did the previous day, how much Torah study you did and everything. It's like a cycle. It's a cycle. Your sleeping will determine how much you connect to emunah when you're sleeping. So when you wake up, you have enhanced emunah. But for that to happen, how you went to sleep is dependent on the Torah you put in, because the sleep is the subconscious level of your brain working, which is dependent on the conscious level. If the conscious level was filled with Torah study, you put in the right things as opposed to movies, as opposed to Spider-Man and Superman and whatever, James Bond. You put in tons of Torah in your head. So that's at the conscious level. It affects the subconscious, which is activated when you sleep. So that when you're sleeping, you have enhanced emunah. So when you wake up, you have it. You're able to have the enhanced emunah. Modeh right? Rabba emunatecha. There's abundant faith because of my sleeping. Okay? So what happens now is chokhmah bin adat, the chitzoniyut was filled with malchut. The malchut, the external malchut, goes into the chokhmah bin adat. Okay, that makes sense. The external part, but yet it goes up. This is a tricky part. I have to go over this more to explain it better. The chokhmah bin adat, the internal parts, goes up to become the external of netzach hod yesod. But the external part of chokhmah bin adat, because it was enveloped by the hands, we said the hands are bracha. And if you're smart, you will choose what's called birkat hasechem. So you have a funny case where the internal part of the hands, which is chokhmah, bina, chesed, gvur, tiferet, okay, which is the blessings, they become external to chokhmah bin adat, but they can consider it as one. In that, you're expected to fill emunah, which comes from where? The emunah you're filling in to your chokhmah bin adat, which is become internalized by the chesed gvur tiferet. I know there's a lot of details here. Is coming from the external of what's called Malkhut of the higher world. It comes inside there. The Arizal explains that these four worlds that we said, going backwards, Asiyah, the lower world, Yetzira, Bria, Atzilut, also correspond to the Yud Ke Vav Ke. So let's revert back. Atzilut is the Yud. It's closest to Hashem. That's the idea of Chokhmah. The second world, which is Bria, is corresponding to the Hey. The first Hey, which is Bina, understanding. The world of Bria, of formation, of Yetzira. I don't get you guys confused. Yetzira is the 6 Sfirot in this world. Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And the lowest world, Asiyah, is Malchut. So the Arizal says, because the last Sfira of the world of Yetzira is called Malchut anyways, its tendency of the last Sfira of Yetzira, the second world, its tendency is to go down into the world of Asiyah. Even though the Malkhut of Yetzira belongs to Yetzira, the world above it, above the world of Asiyah, because it's called Malkhut and has a tendency to connect to the section of Malkhut, which is this first world of Asiyah. It goes down and makes itself readily available. So in fact, we said this before, there are 11 technical sfirot in the world of Asiyah, which make up the 11 fragrances of the Ketoret, which, when you recite the Ketoret, you activate these 11 sfirot, which is the 10 of the world of Asiyah, plus the Malkhut of Yetzira, that's 11, which all together work together to help a person do the mitzvah b'simcha, to smash the darkness that the mitzvah is placed in, help you to do the mitzvah with joy, and lift it up, okay? So now, this is part, we're gonna have to go over this again. It's very subtle and detailed, and always you miss a point, and then everything gets thrown off, but we'll go over it again until we get it a bit clearer. We said the external of Malkhut of Yetzira is anyways down in the domain of Asiyah. So when Chokhmah bin Adat, its external part of the Chokhmah bin Adat, become internalized into it becomes, I have to explain this better. It becomes internalized by the internal part of Chesed Gvur Tiferet, the hands, okay? The Malkhut of Yetzira joins in to put in the Emunah there. So that you have Emunah from a higher level. Where is it coming from? Where is it coming from? Emunah is above your level. Where in the world is it coming from? It's there already. It's accessible. Emunah for every Jew is accessible. That's a gift already, because Emunah is technically you're believing in something which is above you. So if it's something which is above you, it should be unreachable. But Hashem made a gift that the Malchut, which represents Emunah, comes down to you, making itself accessible so you can use it. So when the internal of Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, the hands, the blessings, take on the external of Chokhmah bin Adat, which makes what's called the Birkat HaSechel, and then you want to immediately fill it in with Emunah, so the external of Malchut Yetzirah also fills it up, okay? Then the internal of Chokhmah bin Adat becomes external to the next world, to Chesed, to Netzach Hod Yesod, to the external world. The question is, what happens to the internal of Malchut of Yetzirah? Where did it go? We just said the external of Malchut of Yetzirah becomes also part of the Chokhmah bin Adat external of the first world. What happened to the internal? So this is what he's saying here. The internal part of Malchut of Yetzirah becomes enclosed. This is crazy. The Arizal says it becomes enclosed by the Keter of Asiyah. Whoa! I drove all of you crazy. All this is Kabbalah, I know. But this is something which is opposite. Normally we said the external of the upper becomes internal to the lower. The lower, its internal becomes a cup from the external. By Malchut of Yetzirah and Keter of Asiyah. Keter of Asiyah is technically here. Malchut of Yetzirah is here, but it lowers itself to be here. The inside of Malchut of Yetzirah becomes external to the Keter of Asiyah. Crazy. The exact opposite. You would think, let the Keter, which is the highest technically sphere of Asiyah, become a cup to the Malchut of Yetzirah. But here's something opposite happened. The inside of Malchut of Yetzirah went underneath and became a cup for the Keter. This is what he's saying here. This is irrational. This is crazy. But this is how the Keter works, and how Emunah is such a factor, which we're going to get into. This is what Rabbi Nachman's leading to. And I'm going to finish with this. He's leading to this point that when you succeed in joining your Torah knowledge with Emunah, and you make it that the goal of your Torah study is Emunah, so this, because there's regular Torah study, and it is studying Torah with Emunah. This studying of Torah with Emunah is now a predecessor for you being able to receive the infinite light. Okay? So this is like now you've now created the beginning process to be ready to perceive the infinite in your life. Okay, so this is what he's saying here. We're gonna have to go over this next week also, or next class. Ubifnimiyut bircha'an. Okay, and from the innerness of the bircha'an. Look at this word. The bircha'an here is blessings in plural. What are the blessings? This is the correct what we said in last week's class. The blessings are, number one, there's the blessing of the sechel, but now there's the blessing of the keter. This pnimiyut, what he's saying here, the innerness, came from the innerness of this world, of the Malkhut of Yetzira, came from the world above. It now became a cup, pnimiyut bircha'an. It became the pnimiyut of the blessings, for the blessings of the keter, shehu dakuta bircha'an. But this is the refined part of the blessing. What does it mean, refined? This is a type of level of intellect that will bring you to perceive the infinite light. That's why it's called refined, because not everybody gets to this. Only the biggest tzaddikim technically can get to this, but every Jew at his low level, commensurate to how much emunah he has in these tzaddikim, and commensurate to how much he works on being the simcha, he can also have a flash of this in his mediocre life, if you want to say that. So from the pnimiyut of the blessings, which is the refinedness of the blessings, here it's referring to the pnimiyut of Malchut, which became now a vessel for the keter. Nidbarech mehem, comes blessed, a new blessing now. We have Birkat HaSechel. Now is a new stage. What's the new stage? Becomes blessed from them, what's called this term, this unbelievable term, the Mesader and Meyashev et HaSechel, the settling and organization of the mind. This is the next stage. This is unbelievable. There's one thing to learn Torah. You absorb. You have your daily seder in Chumash, Tanakh, Mishnah, Gemara, Shulchan Aruch, Midrashim, whatever, okay? So you're always absorbing knowledge. Very nice. But what are you doing with it? It's there, it's stored in. Don't worry, the Torah is self-healing. The Torah that I absorb, it fixes up my brain, and it'll fix up things. That's, of course, if you're learning Torah properly. If you're learning Torah of Emunah. If you're learning Torah of Emunah, then yes, the Torah is a samchaim. It's a potion of life. If you're learning Torah for the wrong intent, you're learning Torah to come close to Hashem. You're learning Torah just for an accomplishment. I have a BA in Talmud. I have a PhD, a doctorate in Hebrew science and science physiology and what all these funny terms of the Torah. You missed it. The Torah won't do its healing job. The healing portion of the Torah is when it's learned on the right intent. The thing is, we tell a person, learn Torah even though you're not perfect, even though you're not ready. Because a person who learns Torah not for the sake of heaven, eventually come for the sake of heaven. When is that? When a person, he's learning it not for the sake, lo lishma, but he admits it. I know I'm learning Torah with ulterior motives, but I am such a person that eventually I want to be a better person. I do want to learn Torah for the sake of emunah and come close to Hashem. I do want to do tshuva, but it's just so stuck and stuffed deep within. So because of that, we have hope for a person, study Torah, even though you're blemished, even though you're upside down, because eventually it'll bring you to Lishma, the stage of Lishma. Okay, that's when a person has good, but when a person is a mocker, is a late son, and he makes fun, and he has bad midot of ga'ava, ga'ava is the biggest bad midah that doesn't let a person exposures to his truth. Like Rav Nosson once explained the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Kina, ta'ava, va'kavod, motzin et ha'adam min ha'olam. Okay, the kina, jealousy, lusts, and honor take a person out of this world. That's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. So Rav Nosson explained the Mishnah like this. A person has kina, jealousy of other people, jealous, there's still hope to help him. Person has jealousy and also is a taivus, he's after lusts, and always ta'avot and ta'avot, there's still hope to help that person. But a person now who has kina and ta'ava, and on top of it all, he wants kavod, you want honor after that? All three together, Rav Nosson says, motzin et ha'adam min ha'olam. All three together take a person out. Because when a person all of a sudden wants kavod, that's his downfall. Kind of a person, he's the worst person in the world in doing the bad things, but at least he admits it. And I know it's wrong and it bothers me. I just don't know what to do. I'm just sold. I'm addicted to my life and everything. Such a person, there's still room for hope. But when a person now I'm bad and ugly and wrong, and I'm proud of it. Yeah, that's how it is. I'm bad and I'm evil, and I want it because he gave up already a long time ago, that guy. He gave up his after Yehush. So because of that, he wants the honor. So he's such a person you can't help. When we say a person should learn Lo Lishma, it's because there's an intent that he will come to Ba Lishma. Okay, so back to us now. You learn Torah as a cup for Emunah. Once you do that, the Emunah now becomes a cup for something else, the Keter. The Emunah and this Emunah, they're both coming from the same Emunah, which is the corresponding to the sphere of Malkhut of the Olam of Yetzira. It's a higher world from you, yes. But now there's two parts of the Emunah. There's the Emunah part, the external part of Malkhut of Yetzira, which you filled up with your Torah study of this world. The Torah study that you fill this world, you filled it up with Emunah and Hashem. Emunah. My goal of learning is to know how much I don't know. To fill it in, that there's endless levels. When I approach a learning, I didn't, like we said this, we went into this a lot. My goal is not how much I can intellectually, my capacity. I made my goal endless. In the meantime, I'm learning to fill up my capacity, yes. When I approach the page of the Gemara, the approach I'm having is I'm touching something which is connected to the infinite light. Every word of the Chumash is not just a word. It's like, oh no, what's it called? The St. James Bible or something, God forbid, where you just have a limitation of the words, Chas Shalom. The word of a Sefer Torah, every word of a Sefer Torah is connected. I'm just happy to say that last week that was part of a big, beautiful Hachnasat Sefer Torah. And when you think about Hachnasat Sefer Torah, it's unbelievable. The family that donated the Sefer Torah, they wear Shabbos clothing, they make a giant seudah. It's like a wedding. It's like a wedding. But what did we just do? A guy got paid like $15,000 to write a whole Sefer Torah. Okay, he took a quill, ink, parchment, and wrote it, and all of a sudden, they make a big deal, like a wedding, even more than a wedding, with the whole procedure and the music and the kids. What happened here? When the Jew had the opportunity to take the ink with a quill and make letters on parchment, and the letters made combinations of words, and the words made verses which are now similar to the verses from the Torah written by Moshe Rabbeinu, that activates access to the infinite light. Crazy. It was a parchment I can throw in the garbage, ink I can pour out. Now they combined with the right intent. The Sofer said, Hashem, he did this as a mitzvah, writing the Sefer Torah. That's it. It has to be buried like a human being. You can't now destroy it. You can't burn it. You can't just throw it in the garbage. It's like a human being. It's a Sefer Torah. The same thing with a printed Gemara, Chumash, any Torah. You don't throw it out. It's buried like a human being. What happened? It was a piece of paper. I sent it to the printing press, and now I have holy books because these letters are connected to something which is infinite. The ideas that come out of the message, the intellectual message of the Rashi or the commentaries in the Gemara or somebody's Chidushim on the Shulchan Aruch, it's all connected to the infinite light, and therefore it requires the utmost respect, like a Jew. You bury it. What in the world? You bury it because that's what it is. It's connecting to the infinite light. So when a Jew learns these books, learns these teachings with that attitude, I have emunah in what I'm learning, that there's endless depth. And as much as I can understand what Rashi is saying, or Tosfot, or the Balaturim, or the Rif, or the Beit Yosef, or Rashi, or the Midrash, or even a later commentary, the Chafetz Chaim in Mishnah Brura, or a book written by the Berditchever, or anyone, okay? As much as I can understand what he's saying, what he's getting to, the emun I have in learning these books makes it that I'm learning, but it's only a limited level, and the capacity is far way beyond than I can understand it. Someone asked me a question, a good question. You have some texts that have errors, ta'utzover, there's actual like syntax errors. Never do you find that someone erased them, let's fix it up. A later person who was writing a commentary on an earlier book, he will say, it seems there's a mistake in the syntax. We don't dare touch the book, even if there's a mistake. If there's a mistake in Rashi, we don't touch it. There's a mistake in the Chazon Ish, we don't touch it. We don't touch this. We don't make corrections on my own understanding. Why not? Because my understanding is limited. I could be wrong in 50 years from now. I might see it totally different. You showed it to me like this, I'll see it like this. Okay, this is a funny story. I have to say this story. There were two big rabbis in Europe after the Holocaust. One, Rabbi Chaikin, who opened the big yeshiva in France, Aix-les-Bains. He was a survivor of the Holocaust. He was a student of the Chafetz Chaim. And there was a Rebbe in Belgium, Antwerp. His name was Rav Yitzchak Gewürzman. This Rav Yitzchak Gewürzman is very sick. He was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he had major problems with his breathing and the lungs. And he would go from time to time to the health spas in the city called Aix-les-Bains in France. So he got, even though he was Hasidish and he was Misnagdish, Rav Chaikin was a Litvish student of the Chafetz Chaim, and Rav Yitzchak was a Hasidic Rebbe, still they were together and they had respect for each other. And Rav Yitzchak would come, like in the summer months, whatever, for healing for his lungs. The air was good there and the natural spas. So there was once a case where the local shochet of Aix-les-Bains, he shechted a cow, and there was a halachic question regarding the lungs of the animal. So they needed a good place to see clearly with sunlight the actual inside of the lungs. So they went to, there's a lot of mountains and green and grass in Aix-les-Bains. So the shochet brought Rav Chaikin to examine the lung of the animal on the grass, on the hills there, open to the sunlight. At the same time, this Rav Yitzchak Gewürzman was visiting Aix-les-Bains for this medical treatment. And he was there walking there, walking just for his health walk next to where they were examining the animal, okay? And Rav Chaikin thought, Rav Yitzchak, he's a Rebbe, he doesn't know how to learn Torah, what does he know about halacha? Like, he didn't really, he respected him because a Rebbe, but how much in Torah law does he know, okay? So what's funny is like this, the Rav Chaikin was examining the lung of the animal, and Rav Yitzchak was listening and wanting to hear what they're going to say. So Rav Chaikin, he examined the lung, and he told the shochet, I think it's treif, I think it's not kosher. Rav Yitzchak was in the middle like saying Tehillim, he couldn't talk. So he stopped, he moved the animal, he asked them to move the animal like this, and then he indicated to Rav Chaikin, no, take a look now, see, tell me now what you see. So Rav Chaikin now looked from this different positioning of the lung, in the sunlight, and the different, because now they moved the animal like this, he's still standing in the same position. Rav Chaikin looks at the lung, he says, I think it's kosher. So then Rav Yitzchak heard what he said. He moved, he asked him to move the animal again. No. He can't talk, he's saying Tehillim. He moved and he says to Rav Chaikin, no, take a look now. And he sees again. He said, it looks treif. So Rav Chaikin gave up. He said to Rav Yitzchak, no, what's the halacha? Since you seem to know so much, what's halacha? So Rav Yitzchak hinted they should bring a Shulchan Aruch. They brought the Shulchan Aruch, the laws of Shechita and Yerodea. He opened it up to the Siman and he showed him the halacha psak. When Rav Chaikin saw that, he was impressed. He said, you're no longer this is a Hasidic Rebbe for me. You are on the head table. That's it. Okay? What's the point? That you see one thing from one perspective, and then you move the animal another perspective. You're always changing in perspective, right? You need emunah. We don't make a mistake. We don't correct. We don't. I brought that up as an example that we don't. We're very open, prone to mistakes, even in our perspective. Maybe it's really not a mistake. 50 years from now, person made a correction, and then he said, looks back. Wait a second. I understand it totally differently now. If that word was there, I can understand it better now. So why did you use your brain? We don't do that. We make a marking. It seems there's a mistake in the text. Okay. So we learn with emunah. When you do that, you now enter the world of the Keter. What happens of the world of the Keter? The same emunah from the higher world, but its inner essence, the pnimiyut, the inner part of the Malkhut of the world of Yetzira, which is the inner essence of the emunah, which is above you. You are now exposed to the external part of this emunah, but the internal part, which you haven't yet touched, becomes now a cup for this thing called the Keter. The Keter is what he's saying here now, is now a performance of the mind, a control of the mind, which gets to misader and meyashev et hasechel, becomes to organize, misader, and settle the minds. Now look at this. Today's society, a lot of people, a lot of Jewish people suffer from intolerance, lack of clarity, anxiety, where the mind is running and running and running and running. What's Rabbi Nachman introducing to us here? A concept called Misader Miyashev et HaSechel. Settling, organizing, structuring, settling the mind. Is that not something what this generation needs? And on top of that, we spoke about this last class, the way technology is going so fast. You have to get you have to get a computer that works faster than you. Everything, and then you start going faster. No one anymore has time for what's called Yishuv Adat. This, Rav Nosson, in the prayer on this lesson, he calls Mesader Me'ashevet HaSechel, the structuring, organizing, and settling of the mind, as what's called Yishuv Adat. Yishuv Adat, settling of the mind, is the biggest key to come to connect to Hashem. You can't even begin to be happy about yourself if you have no Yishuv Adat. If a person is not a person is not normal. He's not a human being. He doesn't have Yishuv Adat, so Simcha doesn't talk to him, Emunah doesn't, nothing talks to him because the person's crazy. The person's cuckoo. This is what's missing. Me'ashev mesader me'ashev et hasechel Yishuv Adat. This, yes, okay. I need that also. It's a starting point. For that also, I need technically for now a initiative. My initiative is how I can do mitzvah b'simcha, how I can tap into the blessing of the sechel, how I can fill it with emunah, and then I'm ready now to face when Keter fills the higher level of emunah. This is what's called Yishuv Adat. So Rabbi Nachman basically telling us now the reason why people don't have Yishuv Adat. He says this clearly in another lesson in the Likutey Moharan. What lesson? Lesson number 10, part 2. Lesson number 10, part 2, Rabbi Nachman says the reason why people are far from Hashem in the world, you talk to people, it's like talking to the wall. You go now to a guy in San Francisco, he has a newspaper booth, you talk to him about Hashem and the purpose of life, he's not listening, he's in a different world, nothing to talk to. Why is that? Why can't you get to people with things that make sense? You tell them about things that make sense, only an idiot who has nothing in their brain won't get it. You say things that make sense. You tell a person, a Jew who's like Mechalel Shabbat, a secular Jew, Mister, you don't realize that you're going to be in the earth in another 100 years, whatever. What then? What then, according to your atheistic philosophy? What if you're wrong? If you're wrong, you're in for a big time. Oh boy, you're in for it for big time. When you tell someone who has the brain, you know the purpose of life. If you think this world is the purpose of life, you're wrong. It's so sheker, it's so vain that anyone with a brain in their head can understand, their skull can clearly understand that this world in itself is pure sheker, it's pure falsehood. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. A person, I once saw an interview, again, okay, I'm also cheating. William Shatner was an actor from Star Trek. And when he was mourning the death of the doctor, I forgot the doctor's name. Someone can type out the name of the doctor, something, DeForest Kelly, that was his name, not the real name. So he was mourning over, so he said something, and I heard it, and I catch, and I said, you're so stupid, you don't catch it. He said, there was somebody you were laughing with, talking with, enjoying life with, and all of a sudden they're gone. All of a sudden they're gone. And I'm saying to myself, okay, now what? Okay, that doesn't wake you up? Yes, that's true by everybody. Oh, he was so nice, and he was there for me, and we had time together, and we had ice cream together with him. Okay, now what? You're saying a good point. How could it be that a person so intellectual, so vibrant, and then the person just disintegrates, rots in the grave, and that's it? That's it. The whole person was so exciting and so amazing and was so creative and such a brain, even a Torah scholar, Talmid Chacham and everything. Okay, and then you put him in the earth, and that's the goal. That's the end. What it was so amazing. It's not like Chaval Hashem. It's not like they say. It's like such a waste. You created somebody with so much, and then you put them in the earth. You know, you look at your parents, for example. The good times you had and the talking, everything. I know that's it. The body's in the. That's it. So anyone with a brain should realize that's not it. That shows you so obviously that this world is a preparation for something higher. Okay. So we're going back to this. He says that the reason why people are far from Hashem, he says in lesson 10, part 2, is because people lack Yishuv Adat. And the reason why people lack Yishuv Adat, because they don't have simcha. You see, he says, one hand, simcha leads to Yishuv Adat, the calmness of the mind, which we're getting into now. But also, Rabbi Nachman says the reverse. To come to calmness of the mind leads to simcha. It's like always this thing comes back again and again in Rabbi Nachman's Likutey Moharan, that A leads to B, but B leads to A. But here at this point, we're going to stop here. This is unbelievable what he's getting at. He says the blessing of the person's mind to be settled is the key for him to get ready for the next level, which is interaction with the infinite light. For that, a person needs Yishuv Adat. A person needs Mesader Meyashev Et HaSechel. He needs the calmness, the settling of the mind. You see someone who's like this, he can't get to it. Person's always running and running, and even though he's in the Torah and everything, and he's giving over, if now he doesn't have Yishuv Adat, he doesn't have calmness of the mind, he's not there yet. He's not here yet. This is Rabbi Nachman's, in my opinion, his healing for this generation. For children who are difficult in concentration, choser rikuz, lack of concentration, hyperactivity, and lack of calmness, they run to pills and pills and pills. It's worth it. If you have no choice, you do pills, okay, but it's worth it to experiment with Rabbi Nachman's lesson here of how to come to Me'ashev, Mesader Me'ashev Et HaSechel, the structuring, organizing, and setting of the mind through the idea of simcha. And he explained it. According to the Kabbalah, it's crazy what's happening. That the Keter now becomes enclosed with the Emunah from the higher world. The Chokhmah Bin Adat swallowed up the external part of Malchut joins in with the Birkat HaSechel to fill it in with Emunah, and together they go up to include the Netzach Hod Yesod of the upper world of Yetzira, okay? But now the internal part of the Malchut of Yetzira, what happened to that? That stays down and becomes a cup for the Keter of Asiyah. What for? To grant a person Yishuv Adat, calmness of the mind. We'll go on, we'll continue next week. This is something deep. If you really want to pursue this, it's worth reading Rav Noson's prayer on this lesson, and in particular to this paragraph, B'ezrat Hashem, prayer number 24. Thank you for joining. It was a very heavy-duty class, but I think it was worthwhile, Baruch Hashem. And if you have questions, you can always email me or send me a WhatsApp message, B'ezrat Hashem. All the best. Thank you for joining. And I hope it was clear. The class will be recorded so you can hear it over and over again to get more clarity on certain points. All the best. Shalom, shalom.